Hello and welcome into the Roto Wire Esports Show. My name is Ethan Sexton. Joining me, as always, I think we could say as always now. We've done three. This is our fourth show in a row. So joining me, as always, is DFS Chan. Chan, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
Doing well, man. Doing well, despite doing terrible on this morning's slate. Our first four-gamer of the year. Let's take a look back at Wednesday's slate a little bit from this morning. So I think, based on what we talked about yesterday, we did pretty good with T1. We thought they would win and potentially be the top scoring team on the day, which I believe they were. So we'll give ourselves a pat on the back for that and a pat on the back for the LNG sweep. We were pretty heavy we thought pretty heavily that they would get the sweep, which ended up happening. So two pats on the back there, but we won't break our arms doing that because, FPX, they did win, but they dropped the game. So, they were as the most expensive team. They didn't really pay off. And then myself especially, I got to reassess my love for Sandbox, man, because that was a brutal one. And Fredit Breon with the 2-0 one-sided sweep. So what did you think about this morning's slate?
Yeah. First of all, T1 looks so good. Oh, my goodness. I think, they were mad that they didn't do well in the playoffs and didn't make it to the MSI. But yeah, today in both games, their games were flawless. So I'm excited to see what they can bring throughout the split, the summer split, because their next opponent is Damwon Gaming. So we get a marquee matchup early in the split. So that's gonna be exciting to see. And then and LNG, I think we both thought that they were gonna take care of business, which they did, and Victory 5 looked decent, like early game in the first game, but they look horrible the rest of the game. So I think that kind of comes from the inexperience that these rookies have. We mentioned that yesterday. So Victory 5 and Rogue Warriors, this week are at the bottom tier of my list for LPL. So yeah, those are the two takeaways I got. I'm not too worried about the Hanwha Life's chances. I think they're gonna bounce back. They looked okay here and there, but I think they just need to practice more and they take some time to mesh together. But yeah, I was surprised that T1 and Fredit Breon, that was the combination that you needed to have to take down a GPP. So LCK stack, how about that?
I know, right? Interesting. We said it could happen potentially, but I think we were thinking it would be T1 and Sandbox maybe. But Sandbox just – I have to stop thinking of them as anything other than a bad team, I think, honestly. They've just shown it now. It's only one game this split, but from last split into this split. So even when they're playing another bad team, I think I need to really think about – based on how they're priced and things like that, if they're really a safe enough play, which they're proving not to be. I agree with your T1 take. I think this is what we thought they should have been coming into the season, right? And then they had a lot of roster swapping going around and some unsettled lineups, which I think maybe caused a little some issues in the spring with their consistency. But I think if this 5-man lineup can stick together, it's definitely one that can at least contest Damwon for a LCK title, in my opinion.
One additional thing I would point out, if anybody is a better, like straight up better on Bovada or any sports books, T1 looked very good. Might be a recency bias, but Damwon is coming off of an MSI run, so they haven't had much time to practice and all that. So if I were you, I would put my money on T1 to beat Damwon in that series. So just looking ahead.
Save that for tomorrow, all right, when we get into that slate, all right? No, I'm just messing with you. Get on those odds early. They might be better than tomorrow. So, yeah, I don't mind bringing that up at all. But anything else you want to talk about this morning's slate? FPX 2-1 was a little surprising, but no worry really for FPX at all. I did like what Zhao Cao. I'm going to screw up his name, but it's Zhao Caobao or however you want to pronounce it. I thought he looked pretty solid, actually, so I think he's an upgrade for Ultra Prime, but not sure that they're going to be a very good team. But we can, dig into them a little more maybe in some easier matchups.
Yeah, Ultra Prime looks solid in certain circumstances throughout the games. I think FPX, it was kind of like a trap game. I think FPX, this is their second game in less than, 4 days. So I think it was a trap game for FPX, but they bounced back. And as mentioned yesterday, Nuguri, their top laner, oh my goodness, he was on Lucian one game and he dominated, the other team by himself. There was at one point he was 1v4ing by himself. So, and like I said, I think he is very well integrated in the team, and his kill participation keeps going up. So,
Yep.
his price is going to go up. So.
Yeah. I love FPX still. I'm ready to just like smash them on slates when they're priced against as an underdog against some of the other good teams. So yeah, we'll get there. They won't play again until next week, obviously. Let's jump into tomorrow's slate. And let's go ahead and start with the LCK matchup. The 4 a.m. game is KT Rolster versus NS Red Force. DraftKings pricing, they're pretty close together, with Red Force being slight favorites over KT tomorrow. So for KT, really the question marks with the lineup. Again, remember, we'll get this confirmed 3:30 in the morning if you're looking on Twitter. But I have them as the same 5 that they ended the split with. They do have backup. Blank is their backup jungler. He's back on the roster, and Harp is their backup support. So those two could potentially play or substitute in. And then Dove, I think, will start because he ended the season as the starter. UCal is still on the roster. I'm not sure what they're going to do there. Honestly, I think that's the trickiest position for KT because at one point, I thought UCal was really going to be the player that KT were going to build this lineup around, but he just didn't really work out too well. And then lineup changes for Red Force. I think they're going to be the same 4 top jungle, AD carry, and support. And then they bring in Gory as their new mid laner. He's joins from EDG, never played for EDG, and he's a former T1 Academy prospect. I know in the past, like anyone that comes from the T1 Academy, and it used to be like the Griffin Academy as well, but anyone who comes from that T1 Academy is usually a pretty hyped up prospect. So what do you think about this matchup? Seems pretty close on paper.
It is, but I love that new mid laner for Nongshim Red Force, Gory. I think he's definitely an upgrade from Bay. Bay was probably the worst mid laner, in my opinion, in the LCK in the spring split. So obviously that's going to help them to play better. And, and Peanut, I mean, even when he was playing for LGD in the LPL, and now he's with the Nongshim Red Force, last split, in the spring split, he played very well. He's one of the best junglers still, in my opinion. So that jungler and mid laning, like I said this yesterday, but jungler and mid laner synergy is very important. And I'm sure they've been practicing a lot together. And I think Gory, being an upgrade, it's going to help the team a lot. And I have Nongshim beating KT, in this series.
Yeah, I think I can get behind that. I thought Red Force, Nongshim Red Force would be kind of better last split. They weren't awful, but they weren't really that good either. But I do like Rich. I think he continues to get better. He's a good top laner. Diakdam, last split, Red Force scored really poorly, even in games they won, but it was usually through Diakdam carrying. But maybe adding Gorian will help them kind of mitigate all the responsibility from him to carry. Kellen, I think, is a decent support. And then Peanut, like you said, is a guy who can pop off or look shaky, but I think he's explosive. He tries to make stuff happen, which is good for DFS at least. I think you could play both sides of this matchup. I think I agree with you, though, that I'm going to lean towards Red Force as well.
Yeah, and as you mentioned about Gory from, being from the T1 system, Blank used to play for and start for jungle for T1 at jungle last year at times. So, Blank having gone to now the KT roster, and now he might start. We'll see if he starts over Gideon, but I think that will be a difference. That could be a difference that the KT might have needed. And Doran, for just the one last thing I'll talk about KT is Doran in the top lane. I mean, he's fairly solid. So I think going up against Rich, I think that would be a good matchup to watch. But like I said, I have Nongshim beating KT in this matchup. But in terms of the kill potential, I'm not quite sure because Nongshim did not like you said, I mean, they didn't produce as many kills as some other top teams in their wins. So I think it's like gonna be a typical LCK game, maybe averaging like 10 to 15 kills total, whoever wins the game. So I think it might be a game maybe where I want to fade if I don't have any better option on the slate, but we'll see. We'll talk about that in this video.
Yeah, so let's jump on over to the first LPL game of the day. So we've got TT taking on JD Gaming. JDG, they're going to be as is. Zoom, Kanavi, Yagao, Loken, LV Mao, what we're Lu Mao, sorry, as what we're used to there. So no changes for them coming into the slate. And then TT have added Langji from V5. He's been on a bunch of different teams. Kind of bounced around the league a little bit at this point. They're starting captain in the mid lane. He's been on the roster, last split with Twyla. And then Patch comes in from the academy or from the LDL. I don't think any of these roster changes are going to matter much for tomorrow anyway. This looks like a pretty clear-cut 2-0 JDG stomp to me, and Thunder Talk are basically not on the slate.
Yeah, I agree, and I like the fact that now Yagao is starting full time because I think JDG just released ZA. So ZA, used to be a decent mid laner, and it was a big deal last big off season that JDG acquired ZA, but ZA never meshed with that team ever in the last split. So Yagao ended up starting anyway. But now that ZA is gone, Yagao has that, mid laner, locked in. So, I like that even more for JDG. Obviously, these are the 5 starters that have stuck around for a long, long time since last year. So, yeah, I think I have JDG winning 2-0. I know that's a boring take, but yeah, I don't think, like you said, I mean, the new roster for TT is that impressive to me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, do you think is this one of those cases you think where, yeah, it's going to be a sweep, but do you think you need to jam in JDG, or do you think you might be able to get away with not playing them tomorrow? I personally think, looking at this slate, that JDG are the top play, but I wonder if you agree with that or not.
Yeah, I like JDG. I like Rare Adam too, which we'll talk about next. But yeah, I mean, JDG is definitely one of the top 2 to 3 options, in my opinion, on this slate.
Okay. Do you mind if we skip the second LPL series just for now, come back to it as the last? Because that's the one that I find the most intriguing. Do you mind if we go to the Gen G DRX series? So both Gen G and DRX should be as is with their same 5-man lineups that they ended the spring with. So there shouldn't be any roster changes there. Gen G, in terms of DraftKings pricing, are pretty much the 3rd most expensive or 4th most expensive in the role as favorites in this matchup. Gen G, historically, Gen G, very good team. Suffocating is a word I like to use with them because they play really, a lot of times they play really like a macro-centric, snuff you out kind of style where they don't pick up a ton of kills. But one guy that I always love playing in DFS is Ruler because he is the hard carry of this team.
Yeah, I agree. If you're playing Gen G, Ruler is the must-have. Kled is another must-have, in my opinion, if you're long stacking them. BDD, for some reason, in the last split, did not play well in terms of kills and assists and kill participation for DFS purposes. But yeah, I mean, I think Gen G, they finished 2nd in the spring playoffs, so they were very good last year as a team. But yeah, if you're long stacking them, Ruler and Klid are definitely the 2 players I would focus.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I don't think DRX are in the straight up chop them off the slate zone, but I don't think that I'm going to end up there. I think this is still a pretty young lineup that's going to have some bumps in the road against the better teams in the league. So I think we can look at them on some other slates because they did show some upside in series last year when they're facing weaker teams. But I think Gen G will just prove to be a bit too much for them. But I don't hate this DRX lineup. I just think for tomorrow, it's not really going to work out for them.
Yeah, no, I agree. They didn't really make any roster change. Gen G did not either. So I mean, just comparing the stats from last split spring split, I mean, Genji should dominate. But, it's early in the split, in the summer split first game for both teams. So anything could happen. But even when DRX does win, they don't tend to score as well as some other teams that are on the slate today. So yeah, maybe DRX would be a good GPP option, but in terms of just based on stats, they just don't score enough for me to consider. So
right. Yeah, so those three are all pretty straightforward, I think, and we'll see. I find this Rare Atom LGD series to be the most interesting on the slate, actually. And I'll give you my reasons after we talk a little bit, and maybe I'll get you to buy in on what I'm trying to sell, or maybe you'll just tell me I'm crazy. Either way is fine. You can tell me I'm crazy. That's fine. But first off, so we already saw Rare Atom play once this week. Their same lineup as earlier in the week. No changes there. LGD, so they've made quite a few changes, actually. So Garvey is going to start. He's back in the top lane. He filled in for Kramer a little bit as their AD carry when Kramer was out in the spring. But Kramer's back and ready to rip here off the start of the split. So those two are back. They bring in Shadow in the jungle. So Shadow, people remember, he didn't play in the spring anywhere, but he's formerly of Mad Lions, and in my opinion was one of the better junglers in Europe last year. Kind of fell off towards the end of the season, and I think that's kind of what ended up costing him his job coming into this year with Mad Lions. But an explosive player, a really good playmaker, and a solid jungler. And one thing that we should point out too is he's Italian residency, which is surprising. I didn't realize, but he is of Chinese heritage. So I'm wondering if that'll help with the language barrier. I mean, I don't know for sure, of course, but a lot of times when you see like maybe a Korean player coming into China, there could be some communication issues at first while they're learning the language. But I think Shadow should, my assumption, and could be dangerous, but since he's got Chinese heritage, that he'll probably know enough Chinese to be able to communicate effectively with the rest of this team. So there's that, and then the aforementioned GA, which you talked about, was on JD Gaming last split, but rarely played. He returns to LGD as their mid laner, taking over for Uniboy. And while I don't think he's great, I think he is a big upgrade from Uniboy, who we talked about yesterday. It was one of the worst mid laners in the league last split. So a good upgrade there in the mid lane. And then Mark joins from BLG. We talked about him when BLG played as well, that he's not the most explosive guy, but he's a solid presence in the bottom lane. So overall, I honestly think this LGD lineup is not bad, man. I think a lot of people will think of them from their terrible last split, but they've changed 4 out of their 5 players. And I think Kramer is a guy who is a pretty good AD carry and can take over games. So I kind of like this LGD lineup, and I'm not going to be afraid to make a lineup with them against Rare Atom tomorrow. Do you think I'm crazy, or can you kind of buy into that a little bit?
No, I'm behind it. I'm totally behind it. As you said, I mean, ZA and Mark, yeah, they used to be with LGD at some point in their career. So they're rejoining the team from, being elsewhere now. So I think, that obviously helps. And and then Shadow, like you mentioned, I mean, yeah, he was one of the top tier junglers when he played in the LAC in Europe. So I think the better question is whether they're gonna come out firing as a team and whether they're gonna play well together in the first game of the split. Obviously, I'm sure they've had scrims and everything during the off season, but it's sometimes tough to bring in all these new players that have never played together in a competitive match. So I think just the fact that Rare Atom has played a game or series a few days ago, I think that helps Rare Atom's chances, in my opinion. But yeah, I think I can get behind that. I mean, LGD definitely has a shot. LGD definitely has a better shot to upset their opponent compared to other underdogs on this slate. So yeah, you have a good point.
Yeah, I think too, part of it is that there's such a pricing discrepancy between the two teams. So LGD are one of the cheapest plays on the slate, but I honestly think I like them better than DRX and KT. And of course TT, but they're not even on this slate, right? So I honestly think LGD are the best underdog on the slate, but you don't have to pay a price that would say that on DraftKings. So I do agree with your concern. I think Rare Atom are a set 5-man group that have been playing together for a full split, while this is a really new look roster for LGD. So there is some question marks. Do they come out and fire on all cylinders? I think probably Rare Atom will win, like in my head, but I'm not afraid to play LGD, and I'll definitely have an LGD lineup. I think for me, they're the best underdog play on the slate.
Yeah, and one thing I would like to point out is all these 4 LPL teams tended to play on the faster side. And I mentioned this because earlier I mentioned something about the DRX and the LCK teams tending to play slower. So if you are trying to choose between the LCK and the LPL, which sometimes I do because, last split, the LPL tended to play faster than the LCK teams in general. So, yeah, I mean, all 4 teams, I'm looking at the kills per minute metric. They're all ahead of all the LCK teams that are on the slate, which is surprising to me. So just a thought.
Yeah. So, yeah, let's we'll jump back over here. Oh, I have clicked something wrong, Chan. There we go. Sorry. I lost you for a second. That's still working out some hiccups here. Sorry about that. But
as long as we're still alive.
Yeah, we're here. We're still here. We got it back pretty quick, so not too bad. Chan, any other thoughts for tomorrow's slate you want to bring up, or do you think we kind of covered everything pretty well?
Yeah, I think today's slate, we talked about how the LCK teams can score the highest. But I'm pretty certain that I'm more inclined to just, stack some LPL teams. But the Rare Atom and the LGD matchup is a very interesting one, like you said. TT is off the player pool, in my opinion. So JDG, LGD, Rare Atom. Those are the 3 teams that I would focus on. And then from the LCK side, I really like Nongshim, Red Forest's chances tomorrow to score fairly high, just based on the fact that they have a huge upgrade in the mid lane, and then Peanut, with a good mid laner, tend to score better and such, as shown by his days at LGD and former LCK days. So yeah, I like Nongshim's. Genji is obviously going to be very popular, but as well as JDG. But yeah, I like Nongshim as my GPP team, sneaky team to stack. So that's my take.
Yeah, I like it. I can get on board with that for sure. It's going to be fun to see. I love watching Peanut, right? Because he's either really great or really bad, and in either way, it's exciting for the viewer. So we'll see what he can do with the new mid laner. And yeah, that sounds good, man. If anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to drop them down below. And, we check throughout the day to see if we've gotten anything, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Another great way to get in touch with us is to go to rotowire.com/try and get a free 10-day trial, no credit card required. And while you're on your trial, you can go to rotowire.com/chat and join up with our Discord server. So that's a great way. We're both in there, dropping lineups when they get confirmed, all that kind of good stuff. So we're in there chatting. Feel free to check those things out. Again, rotowire.com/try. I think that's it for today, man. A little bit shorter today as we're getting better here, our second day of the 4-game slates. But I think that's good. I think for me, it's going to be an LGD, JDG lineup, and I'll either be at the top or at the bottom.
Good luck, Ethan.
All right. Catch you guys tomorrow.
See ya.